are in the IAA India chapter webinar, third webinar with Mr. Nishant Rao.
LinkedIn really is trying to solve is help each professional be more productive and successful. And we're trying to do that by ensuring that relevance, because we know who you are based on your industry, based on your function, based on things you've mentioned in your profile. We can try and make sure that there's insights that are relevant to you. And that's the wave that we are all in right now. So as consumers, we're increasingly sort of getting tons of information, and what avenues like social are creating is a way to have a voice and participate in that and create our own information. So as there's this information bloat, what becomes super important is relevance to you and me as consumers. And so that's a big part of our consumer value proposition, in addition to, of course, the having a critical mass of professionals that you can collaborate and communicate with, as Manish had mentioned earlier. Now, as there's these tons of information being created, we see sort of an opportunity for companies and brands to play a part in making those members, making our members or making professionals generally more productive and successful. And so, the way we're doing that is by tapping into a lot of these insights of, as consumers, say on LinkedIn, are sharing a bunch of their insights, their opinions on whether it's news or opportunities, etc. We are using those signals to help understand what their unique needs are, and allowing brands and companies to play a part in actually getting them the relevant information and content, so that they help these professionals be more productive and successful. So, fundamentally, what the internet has enabled is, because of this explosion of information, changing not only how you and I kind of collaborate and communicate, but also how companies need to kind of play their part in making us more productive and successful in this hyper-competitive, super fast, turbocharged area. So with that, I'll take questions, and happy to answer questions along any one of those dimensions.
Hi Nishant, this is RK here. I work for a news group, ABP group, which runs three news channels. So in the last year and a half, I've seen that news seems to be an important focus area for LinkedIn, especially through LinkedIn Today. So I have two questions. What percentage does LinkedIn Today contribute to the overall traffic of LinkedIn? And right now we see mainly US news content sources. Do you have a plan for including Indian news content onto the LinkedIn platform?
Yeah, great question. As we kind of thought about sort of the member experience and what kind of information helps make them more productive, news is definitely one of those things that, as professionals, all of us look to and gravitate towards, because it's so important, not only from an individual perspective, but also from a business standpoint. And so there was a lot of focus on kind of, I think the broader vision is for LinkedIn to become the professional publishing platform for individuals. And part of that is generating their insights relevant to a particular, whether it's a news article, whether it's a content piece. You may have seen some of the influencer pieces that where business leaders are actually publishing on LinkedIn. But overall, this is a shift in direction to make sure that we move away from being just a static profile into kind of being a more holistic representation of who you and I are as members. So, giving people a opportunity to actually share their opinions. So, the starting point is having some content out there so that people can react and share their opinions. One of those pieces of content obviously being news. Now, increasingly, we're kind of having a more integrated view to that, to have channels, say for example a leadership channel. Now that leadership channel could come from some influencer content, could come from some news content, or it could come from individuals sort of writing posts. And so that's the direction sort of LinkedIn overall is taking. So it's not, I wouldn't call it a focus on news per se, but a focus on more becoming that professional publishing platform. To your question around sort of news as a percentage of page views, obviously we don't report site metrics at that level, but what I can tell you is, LinkedIn, after it has had introduced LinkedIn Today, has catapulted to becoming the largest source of a lot of news sites. So we are different in that we want to respect the IP of all the different other news sites out there. And so when you find a news article, when you click on it, it's actually a page view that gets generated because the page is being rendered on, say, a Fortune or a TechCrunch, etc. But because of that, we have become one of the largest, if not the largest, routers of traffic to the different sites, whether it's a TechCrunch, whether it's a Forbes, whether it's a Fortune. And so, that gives you a sense of the impact LinkedIn is having in this space. Coming to sort of the second part of your question, in LinkedIn we want to be in the scalable technology business, and so we've tried to take a view to whether it's news or even influencers, having global influencers who would have insight to offer our Indian members and Indian professionals, and just as much as a person in Malaysia, etc., as the starting point. And now we're pivoting towards a point where we're going to be able to have more local news and local influencers having relevance, going back to that conversation around relevance there. And so we're in the process of making some product changes to enable that to happen.
Hi. Nishant, what I wanted you to share with us was that personal networking sites and personal networking platforms have really taken off in India. And if I were to compare LinkedIn to the personal, networking sites, I would think that you're on the back foot or a slight disadvantage. And the fact that Twitter stopped the feed to you guys didn't help at all. So I wanted to understand from a pure consumer behavior perspective that if I want to attract the B2C kind of customers, and if I'm a brand manager, then what is the consumer behavior that you have of people on LinkedIn? Help us understand, what do people do on LinkedIn apart from updating their profiles and accepting or rejecting connections?
Sure. So let me start in reverse order. Let me give you a sense of what people are doing on the site broadly and kind of the demographics that we have on the site, and then maybe we come back to that question on personal networks versus professional networks, if that makes sense. So, if you think about LinkedIn's story, we started the company about 10 years ago, and early on, I think that what you mentioned earlier, it was definitely true of LinkedIn being a place where you would update your profile or come to look for jobs. What we've seen increasingly in the US about 3.5 to 4 years ago, and now we're starting to see that in India also over the last year or so, is that people have stopped updating their profiles just when they're looking for jobs. And that's really when what's enabled a lot of magic to happen. Because people are realizing that their profiles are their conduit to a variety of other sort of factors. So if you think about the 3 types of content that our users are saying that they want from the site. It's information on connections and opportunities. Those could be job opportunities or it could be business opportunities. They're looking for updates on brands that help make them more productive and successful. And they're looking for information on relevant current affairs. So if I break that down into just what I do, for example, as a consumer on the site, I go in, LinkedIn's my professional dashboard. I open it in the morning, get a sense of what's going on, if within my network. Either they're sharing news articles, they're sharing insights, maybe people have switched jobs, we have reminders, for example, on someone's job anniversary, etc. So it's enabling me to stay in touch with my connections. If there's opportunities that happen to have popped up, with regards to conversations, etc., I find out more about that. And then, obviously going into getting updates from brands, where increasingly brands have followers on LinkedIn and they have targeted status updates to those followers. So all of that is kind of coming together, and what people realize is the more you fill out your profile and keep it fresh, that allows us to make things more relevant to them. So that's in terms of just giving you sorry, I'm hearing a little echo. In case folks are not muted, if you could mute, and then we can come.
Mute, please.
Yeah. Fantastic. So that's in terms of sort of gives you a sense of what people are doing on the site. In fact, we did some research in India specifically also to see what is the top 5 things that the Indians are using LinkedIn India for, and jobs was number 5 out of the top 5. It wasn't in the top 4 or top 3, and so that's been the huge shift that we've seen. Obviously, in our developed markets like US, but we're seeing that in India, and that's really pleasing for us, because eventually we believe that the more information you give us, the more we can make these things more relevant to you. Now, coming to a little bit of the demographics that you can kind of think about with respect to sort of professionals, we have historically been a site where what we think of it as prosumers, so professional consumers. And so these guys, these people, as you might imagine, are skewed towards a little bit more educated, affluent audience relative to, say, the other larger sites or networks that you might have. And that just comes from the bias that LinkedIn has on the professional context. It's a self-selection mechanism, right? We don't aspire to be a site where you come and come for entertainment reasons, or you come to just hang out. In fact, we did TNS did this survey, this research for us, which really helped codify for us the difference between a personal network and a professional network. And the genesis of what they found was saying people go to personal networks to spend time, whereas they're coming to professional networks like LinkedIn to invest time. And to be fair, each person can have these different personas, and so as a result, the different sites just give you a manifestation of those. So I use Facebook, I use Twitter, I use LinkedIn, but I'm a different person. I'm looking for different things from each of those networks. Facebook allows me to stay connected to my friends and family in a way that I couldn't ever before. Twitter gives me a voice to have real-time communications, and LinkedIn is sort of my professional network where I can have my professional avatar, if you will, on notice, where kind of sharing my thoughts, my comments, again in a professional context. So that professional context has really helped us, I think, in terms of not necessarily playing the same game as the other networks in terms of just going off of any volume that you want. We want professionals, and we don't want them to kind of come and have dilutive random comments on the site, but very aspirational, professionally productive comments on the site. And so it's just, I think, a manifestation. The numbers are just a manifestation of that. And I would say, even if you look at India, where we have over 20 million members, that ratio of number of people on LinkedIn relative to professional networks is personal networks is closing fast, and that just gives you a sense of the value that people are seeing on our site.
Thanks, Nishant, for doing this webinar. Really appreciate your coming up for this. The question I have is, we have to come up with new ideas and strategy for clients on social media on a daily basis. And when we talk about strategies for LinkedIn, we feel very restricted, because one of the big reasons is that Facebook opened up their API to build applications, Twitter did the same, but LinkedIn has been sort of a closed network when it comes to API and building applications. I understand it's opening up slowly, but is there a conscious business call behind it? How soon do you see that changing? If at all, it would be open for everyone?
Yeah, so I think LinkedIn as a company, one of our core philosophies is something we call members first, and part of the hesitation to completely open up APIs is related to making sure that the member experience is not compromised as a result of that. And so we are constantly sort of straddling the line between making sure that we are fostering innovation, just open innovation, as well as making sure that the member experience doesn't get adversely impacted as a result of it. Now, as you mentioned, we have seen a tremendous increase in the number of developers using our APIs. We participate in hackathons and kind of have increasingly new proofs of concept all the time that we see. And people, I think, are realizing more and more the power of our public APIs that are already there. So we do have a pretty large suite of public APIs out there for people to use. And increasingly, we keep going back and looking at individual private APIs to say, hey, should we be allowing them to expose them, or are there any members first concerns with sharing that information? And I think part of that that philosophy of members first has helped keep us where we are and keep our context very specific to a professional context, and that's helped us. And so you can expect to see more and more of that. Now, increasingly, we're also helping marketers, if you will, kind of leverage some of these APIs in a more creative way, because almost sometimes there's a disconnect between the creative ideas that you have and how do you actually go, which APIs do you use. So sometimes it becomes more of an education thing where actually there's APIs to use and you could use them, you just don't know sort of how to use them. in some sense. And you may have noticed just in the last couple of months we've had some large API deals go out. Van Heusen, with the Best Dressed Professional, Tourism Australia, looking around the who's looking for a break, and so that's examples where we're helping marketers kind of connect those dots. And they're actually, these API solutions are built by external sort of CDP partners that that we help our customers identify. So it's not like we are trying to make a monetization play on building of those APIs as proprietary to us, and we're doing something that someone else couldn't. But we're helping give them that mind share and give them the education needed to harness the full power of LinkedIn. And if I think about LinkedIn Marketing Solutions, since that's sort of where your question is there, I think of three broad buckets of solutions, just so marketers can kind of help get their head around how this is potentially different than some of the other plays that they have available to them. So I think of it in three buckets. There's targeted reach products, where again a big paradigm shift in LinkedIn is because we can kind of target more effectively, we want to make sure that you're using not a mass generic campaign, but a targeted campaign that's again relevant to those particular people, and hence you can, it's good for the member and it's good for you. And so these targeted reach products take the form of display ads, take the form of partner messages, where you can, which is a more sophisticated method of email marketing, where the message can actually be tailored to different audience segments, or be dynamic in that if you see the message before a conference versus after the conference, the message could be different. So that's the targeted reach products. Then there's a big push into making sure that marketers realize that it's an overall engagement play that digital is enabling so far going forward, where consumers want to be part of this conversation. And so these engagement products take the form of a follower ecosystem, where you can have a bunch of followers similar to fans on Facebook, and use targeted status updates to those fans. Again, those targeted status updates could be targeted differently to a technology audience relative to a student audience relative to something else. We have groups where you can curate content and kind of post within the group also. We have slide share content ads, where again you can kind of engage with this content in a different manner, and slide share channels. And then we have these spur to action products, which is where a lot of the API stuff comes in, where we say, okay, look, you've found the audience that you want to, you've engaged this audience, let's spur them to action at different points in time. And that's where these API solutions come in, where you can go out and get them to do something. So we talked about Van Heusen and Tourism Australia, but a very successful counter on which were more consumer campaigns on the B2B side was the American Express campaign we had about a year and a half ago, where member get member, members were referring each other into for certain American Express content and products. So like if you think as a marketer on saying I can figure out who my right target audience is, I know what the message is, then I can take this combination of LinkedIn products and make sure that I'm having a ongoing conversation with these with this target audience, and then I'm spurring them to action at the right times. I think that creates a win-win long-term loop, rather than what appears in the market to be more one-off campaigns, right? That's historically what's been happening in the past. And so it's a paradigm shift that's happening, as we go forward. And I think that'll continue to evolve over time. I was reading the stat on eMarketer, for example, where content marketing, which is kind of a broad umbrella around all of this, is on the rise. So I think it was some 18% of people polled, or marketers polled, were looking at content marketing pretty seriously in 2012. And now that number for 2013 is almost 34.8%. So that's like almost a doubling of it. At the same time, whether it's at the client side, whether it's on the agency side, part of our processes, part of our thinking has not quite evolved to that aspiration of having more relevant content-led conversations. And I think that's where we find ourselves right now, is people are looking to bridge that gap to say, okay, consumers want more relevant content and they want to have this ongoing dialogue. We want it as well, but we just don't know how to do it. And that's where you'll hopefully see a lot more support coming your way as more digital agencies kind of figure that out.
Hi, Nishant. So I wanted to check with you big data. Big data is a buzzword. Everybody just keeps talking about big data. So how much of it you are leveraging in India? Yes, it's very good to say big data, but how much does it translate in the real time, especially on LinkedIn?
It's a great question, and yes, I agree with you that big data has become one of those buzzwords that everyone wants to do something with. But I was actually at I think it was one conference, and I heard this stat where Oracle said almost 68% of companies had some sort of data warehousing BI solutions, but only 8% of them actually used it. So that gives you a sense of that disconnect, a similar other disconnect that one has. And this is something that LinkedIn that we've had to take very seriously, and we've had to get our hands around just because of the volume of data that we see, on a very regular basis. As a result of it. And so I'll give you some examples of how we are using this. We definitely have the technology set up where we're kind of moving away from just complete relational databases to having unstructured information, using technologies like Hadoop and Hive and Pig to kind of mine that data. But we've also taken it further to use those insights and pull it back into sort of our product process. So I'll give you a couple of examples. Our iPad application, when it originally launched, was kind of a simple mirror of the website, that same flow. But in the initial usage, we noticed that people were using the iPad differently. So there was a spike from 7 to 9 in the morning, what we call coffee time, where people were kind of trying to plan for their day, it seemed. And then there was a spike in the evening, which we call couch time, where people were kind of catching up for what they missed out. So that insight, when we were looking at it, fed back to make sure we quickly got another iteration out where we integrated calendar in. And so we said, for people who were looking and planning their day in the morning, these members could actually look at which meetings they had, who is the person they're meeting, get their profiles, see what conversations those people have been having recently. And increasingly now with LinkedIn contacts, we're able to actually draw out even more information from the email conversations you're having with such and such people, etc. And kind of had that. Then in the evening, we pushed the news stuff onto that site, which said, here's the news you kind of missed out on during the day. And so that was an example where we kind of used big data to funnel back into product. Similarly, we're kind of doing using analytics across sales and marketing, for example, to say if someone's interacted with our website and they downloaded, say, a white paper, and now we've had a conversation with them, we're kind of moving to this temperature-based model of scoring accounts, for example, and saying, what's the probability that we can actually, make this account more successful with using our products. So that's another example of sort of using big data. But fundamentally, these are kind of oriented more towards companies, towards the member experience itself. We have this platform called Lix, an internal platform where we're running thousands of A/B tests all the time on our sites as we kind of, you've seen the frequency with which we release features, and we're using this big data to help make better decisions. So we'll run A/B tests on something, we'll use that big data to say, okay, actually, this feature worked, this part of this feature worked really well, so let's double down on that, let's change something else, before we do a full ramp or release on any one of our products that you may have seen recently. So we're actually kind of tapping into big data and driving those through to actionable insights, both on the product side as well as on the business side of the house.
Just another question.
Great.
This is smaller. So who are your clients who are using, sorry, I just need to complete this. So which clients are using it effectively? I read that Wells Fargo does, but barring banking, is there any other sector who's using big data with LinkedIn effectively?
I think there's many examples of clients using big data, to a question that, with the related question that was there earlier in terms of downloading insights. Of course, we will continue to kind of keep trying to make that member experience easier in terms of getting some of that information. But people are, so GE, for example, it used content ads, it used sponsored in-mails, which is our partner messages, etc., and was using a lot of insight of what's going on in their groups to say which content topics are being interacted with more, and use that to in real time kind of keep making changes to their content strategy in terms of what, say, status updates they would share with their followers. And so I think part of it is there is already tools out there on LinkedIn to tap into insight and reporting like you wouldn't believe, right? In terms of, because we're able to give you specific insight on which by industry, by geography, so many different cuts which no one else can do. It kind of comes down to on the flip side, from a client standpoint or an agency standpoint, are you actually using those in real time and making course corrections to your campaigns, to whether it's to the creatives, to the content you're pushing, etc., in a rapid enough manner? And I suspect when I talk to sort of our sales teams, I'm not sure everyone is fully tapping into that that potential. Partly because, again, we're stuck in the mode of one-off campaigns, and that's just how it works. And we're in that process of evolution towards these always-on marketing models.
Hi, Nishant. I run a digital marketing company, and we work with enterprises, but increasingly we see interest from SMBs to get onto the digital bandwagon. And my question was related to how the SMBs can best leverage the LinkedIn platform, both from hiring as well as outreach perspective.
So increasingly, basically, if we think about the enterprise value proposition, like I had said in the beginning, we see enterprises playing a role in enriching the lives of our members, and so we're looking to transform the ways companies hire, market, and sell, so that they can make all of these three aspects more relevant. Because if there's a relevant job or a relevant marketing opportunity or a relevant sales opportunity, better for the member and better for the company as a result, because you're moving from quantity-based processes to quality-based processes, because there's more relevance. So for SMBs in particular, when we have conversations, we are seeing a realization that LinkedIn is a platform for them, rather than a one-off point solution. And so, whether you think about leveraging our talent solutions products to create a proactive brand that SMBs can create, because normally you have the employment brand skewed towards the large players in large companies which have brand awareness, but the SMBs may not maybe have that. Now what LinkedIn provides is an opportunity for you to reach your target audience, because you're not looking for everyone under the sun as an SMB. You're looking for a certain type of person, and that for that relevant audience you want to create some sort of an employment brand or a marketing brand, if you will. And so LinkedIn allows you to do that, at scale within obviously your target audience. And we have products online as well, where you can use like our LinkedIn ads platform to place ads relative to the target audience that you have. So there's increasing amounts of solutions that SMBs are leveraging on LinkedIn across all of these three categories of hire, market, and sell. Now, there's also SMBs are drawing insight from groups that are created focused on SMBs, because again, there's a lot of larger companies like say Dell who's focused on trying to reach that audience and in process kind of making them more successful. So Dell's SMB custom group has been one of the popular groups here in India, where they have almost I think 12,000 members at this point, and one out of four are actually CXOs, and there's a lot of relevant discussions happening. So this gives an opportunity for the SMBs to interact with each other, of course, but also tap into the wisdom of what's happening at larger companies that may be relevant to those SMBs.
Hi Nishant, my question is around verified accounts. Has LinkedIn thought of introducing verified accounts, giving an option to the user to pay a small fee, and LinkedIn could use that money to get the background check done? Post background check, LinkedIn could have an icon next to the individual saying that it's a verified individual or a verified company.
Yeah, no, great question. I mean, we have not necessarily announced anything along those lines, obviously, so far. And part of what our belief is that the verification may not be unique to any given one person, right? They obviously own their profile, but we kind of like to think about verification as your network verifying for you. And so we have tools already out there which are for free and public that members, like people in my network, can kind of use it to curate what I'm saying about myself on the site and report something that may be factually incorrect, and we see members kind of exercising that on behalf. So it's almost like verification by proxy a little bit. Plus, we always encourage our customers when they're say making a hiring decision or a business decision, etc., to tap into the fact that this person is not a person in isolation. There's a network around him, and more likely than not, there's people in common between his or her network and your network, to use conversations with those people to do a verification of sorts. Now, to your question whether there's still value in going out and making sure that all the pieces of information that are on a person's profile are in fact completely accurate. There may be. So far we haven't picked up tons of noise around that being completely inaccurate or completely factually wrong, and so maybe that's why it hasn't bubbled up to the top list of priorities that we have. But again, we've seen a lot of traction in these other more disparate verification sources.
Yeah, I want to ask you about Pulse. Are you planning to integrate it with LinkedIn, or is it going to be a standalone product?
Yeah, so we've already done some basic integration with Pulse, where one of the channels that you see in Pulse now is a LinkedIn channel. Over time, increasingly, what Pulse gives us is access to the mobile platform as a way to digest information. I would say news of course is where Pulse started, but broadly speaking, to the concept we were talking about earlier, if LinkedIn becomes the professional publishing platform, Pulse gives us that avenue into mobile. So there's already some light integrations, and as you'll see with our other acquisitions like SlideShare, etc., you'll see more and more integration happening over time where it makes sense. At the same time, for SlideShare and Pulse, they're great businesses even to begin with, so we're trying to manage that balance between keeping them innovating at the pace that they want to for the use case they have, and also leveraging it with the data that we have at LinkedIn to make their use cases more powerful and create some cross use cases. Like for example, the SlideShare content ad is one of those cross use cases where it said SlideShare has slides, there's content ads on LinkedIn. What if we could actually have that content right in the ad itself, where you can kind of go through the SlideShare deck and create some lead gen directly in there. So you'll increasingly see those opportunities, but we're trying to manage both, where we keep them independent in their innovation and at the same time leverage some of the data assets that LinkedIn has.
Nishant, thank you so much for taking out your valuable time to be with us this afternoon. I'm sure you must have answered many questions which many people had about LinkedIn and the potential it brings on table. And we would like to again host you more often so that we could address more questions which people may have, and also assist LinkedIn in whichever way is possible.
Yeah, absolutely.
Thank
you again for having me. Of course, this was a LinkedIn specific conversation, but happy to kind of have a broader conversation around any of these topics, because I think, if you think about content marketing, you think about, member value as a consumer. These are generic, sort of larger, broader concepts in the internet age that one has to figure out to succeed, because that's the wave that's coming. So I'd love to have even broader conversations around social and get feedback on what we can do, because we're very committed to this journey of making our members more productive and successful. Thanks everyone. Have a great afternoon.
Thank you.